Okay, President Joyce, we're ready to go.
All right, Joyce, we'll now resume discussion PPL with staff member or compliance, or what are you today?
Staff member F. Thank you. All right, so I do, before we dive into this is mailing, what is it again, Rachel? One.
C2.
C2 for the public. I do also want to apologize. As you can see, I don't typically do these conversations, and the mailings that was sent out to the public, I was not aware that we have to have everything on a PDF or that it doesn't look the same in Teams. So when I do a Word doc with comments in each section, it can be very hard to see. So they had to all get separated out for when the mailings went. We will be using a Word doc today as we're doing it, so it'll be easier to see the rules together, but they were super spaced out. So it was a very lengthy, long document, and I apologize for that. All right, with that being said, so we're going to begin looking at these division of roles, and we're going to go each section at a time and stop to discuss the proposed revisions and requested policy discussions. I'll lead a round robin for each policy discussion section to allow each board member, including board president, to be able to focus on the conversation and not have to track where in the round robin you are, so that everyone can provide input. And then I'll go back at the end and ask if there's any further comments or thoughts, so that everyone could comment on everyone else's thoughts if needed. Okay, and in an effort to be mindful too of time where there's sections that are proposed to be struck completely or that are duplicative, I'll just open it up to, does anyone have any comments? And if there are none, we'll move on to the next section. Do you have a question? Board Member Kroger.
Board Member Kroger, can you just zoom out just a bit so we can see the comments on the right hand
Yeah,
side?
I'm gonna have to scroll back and forth so we can see that, but yes, I will do this. See.
Again, I apologize. It probably would have been best if I would have nested them in on the document underneath so that everyone could see it simultaneously while looking at the rules.
Okay, that's fine.
We will go nice and slow or however pace the board would like. So we are going to begin this journey. And I do ask the board members to not be limited to the specific policy question that is being asked in that section, and to keep a bigger ethos of what parameters are needed for this locker system, what is needed to operate safely and effectively and accurately. So please do not be felt like you have to be limited to what's being asked right there. It would be great to get the feedback answering that question, but if there's other things, please, this is that time to have the brainstorming policy discussions. All right, you stretch your muscles, let's flex them. Division 143-0001. This is the beginning section you can see here. As you can see, there's the requirements of the law that we have on the side. I apologize, the section that you can't see is already listed there. The retail drug outlet may operate one or more pharmacy prescription lockers located within the state that need not be at the same physical address as a retail drug outlet. A pharmacy prescription locker operated pursuant to this section is considered part of the retail drug outlet, and a separate license or registration from the state board is not required. For this reason, we propose striking the reference to PPL affiliated pharmacies in all sections, specifically here. And we further, we believe these rules are moved into Division 41. There can be a different structure and account for this section if needed as a transition, but for now, this would be the change at the time. And I'll open it up for comments in this section, starting with Board President Joyce.
For President Joyce, section, it's clear to me. No confusion as what the intent is here.
Board Member Kirkbride?
No questions.
Board Member Smith?
No questions at this time.
Board Member Patel?
Board Member Patel, in this section, in the comment, it is part of the retail drug outlet. I think the PPL definition, according to statute, that is a part of the will call area of the retail drug outlet. What I mean, so we have the outlet, then we have will call area, and the way I see the PPL pharmacy locker is a part of that will call. The extension of, there you go, that's the word. Extension of the will call. And then, on the definition, is the same definition as in the Senate Bill 236? We take word to word, or did we modify something?
Oh, yes, are you talking about section 0005? We were gonna hit that one next, but we can,
Oh, so sorry, I thought it's in one section, sorry about that.
it is a little duplicative. They're the same kind of concept, but just doing the first one first, and then we can come back and do the next. Awesome, thank you. Board Member Kroger?
No comments on this section.
Board Member Pinito?
Nothing to add.
Board Member Chin?
Nothing, thank you.
Board Member Hall?
Nothing to add.
We will move on to then section 855-143-0005 definitions. So in this section, we would propose to strike the definition of a PPL affiliated pharmacy and update the PPL definition to be in compliance with the law. So it would read to state a pharmacy prescription locker or a PPL pursuant to 2025 Senate Bill 236 means a mechanical device that serves as an extension of an Oregon registered drug outlet's will call or point of sale area in which completed patient-specific prescription drugs, devices, and related supplies and non-prescription drugs, devices, and related supplies are stored for pickup. This one also does not to be too sensational, but I will go around and do individual round robin for the next board members, which would be Board Member Kirkbride starting.
No question.
Okay, Board Member Smith,
No questions.
Board Member Patel,
No comments.
Board Member Kroger,
No comments.
Board Member Pinito,
Not at this time.
Board Member Chin,
No comment.
Board Member Hall,
No comment.
Board Member Joyce.
Sorry. You say not substantial or not sensational?
Oh, not sensational.
Okay, it's definitely not sensational.
Substantial indeed. All right, we will move on to the next section, which is the registration, the general requirements, OAR 855-143-0010. Staff recommends striking this section since the PPL registration is no longer needed, since it is an extension of the pharmacy. But there are two specific policy discussions that we thought might be appropriate to have at this time. So going around with the first policy discussion, for policy consideration and discussion, does the board want to add requirements for the pharmacy to notify the board of the following? Physical address of the PPL or location change of a PPL or closure of a PPL? And if so, is there a time frame required to provide that notification? We're going to start with Board Member Smith.
Board Member Smith, I think that would be a good idea, just so that like with how pharmacy closure and stuff like that, it has been tough for patients, and I think it'd be a good idea for patients to be aware of if their locker that they go to use is closing, or if that is available to them too. I think it'd be good for patient access to meds as well.
Board Member Patel.
I'm a little bit concerned when you say the next days of physical address change. When you say closure of the PPL, right, then would that be a permanent closure, temporary closure, closure on the holidays? Are we going to define that?
Staff Member Ekroth, that is for you to decide, and that is a really great point compared to ceasing operations versus when it's down. What does the board want to know, or what should staff be able to communicate to the public?
I would not add more language to it because I think legislative intent is to more access to the Oregonians. I think that is a part of their intention to have the prescription lockers, and I mean, and this is expansion of the will call. So if you change your will call in your pharmacy, who do you tell your pharmacy? Yeah, that's another thing I was thinking. And if there is a change, right? I mean, when you do inspection or something like that, then you can just keep a record in your pharmacy instead of telling Board of Pharmacy. It's like we have the self-inspection form. We do everything and we keep in the pharmacy. We don't have to notify the board, something like that. So that's, yeah.
Board Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger, no, I respectfully disagree with Board Member Smith. I don't think the board needs to be notified upon change of the prescription locker in itself. I don't think there's notification requirements. I don't think there is a way, at least within our licensing system, that indicates that a pharmacy has a prescription locker. Correct? So
Staff Member Schmuck, currently they're their own registration type, so we do know where they are that way, and we do perform inspections on them, so it would just be the question of knowing where the location might be to do inspections would be the only kind of question out there the board might need to consider depending on the direction you go.
gotcha. The way I imagine this, that when we no longer have a separate registration for them, if it's registered under the retail pharmacy, it would be then upon inspection of that pharmacy. I don't know if within this portion of the rule language around, ensuring that, updates are kept on hand, readily available for upon inspection. But I don't think that notification of, those to the board are required outside of that. Yeah. I mean, we're not doing the second one, right? We're just doing.
Just one at a time. If that's
Okay.
Or if you
Yeah.
complete into, that's fine too, but Board Member Pinedo.
Board Member Pinedo.
I feel like if there's a closure, we should be notified. Unless everyone feels differently. I just feel like if a pharmacy is closing, they have to notify us that the pharmacy is closing. And a lot of these PPLs don't have to be located in the pharmacy, so if they're gonna close one somewhere, I feel like we should be notified that that is closed. That would be my recommendation.
Board Member Chin.
Board Member Chin, I look at, trying to look at this from a, patient safety perspective, and why would board need to, I can see the closure. The patients aren't looking on our website about where the PPLs are. So, but I think that closure might be something important to us. I'm not sure. That's the only thing it's the only lens I have to look at this.
Board Member Hall.
Member Hall, I mean, we want to know the locations of them, and at least it should be readily available. Then I think for permanent closures, should know about it.
For Joyce.
Board Member Joyce, definitely, being made aware of closure, whether temporary or permanent, is important. Location, I mean, as long as the retail pharmacy knows, the brick and mortar knows where it is. I don't want to add any administrative burden to retails right now. But, I feel like the board should know when a PPL has been closed, and then, further on, we'll probably need to know, like, is it from damage, or is it from weather related, natural, whatnot, but the closure, if any of these, I think that's most important is closure, notifying of closure. The location or physical address, I think we can get that information from the retail brick and mortar.
Member Kirkbride.
Go ahead. What Jen has a question.
That's some
Clarification.
question. If we didn't know that they had a PPL, why do we care if they close a PPL? Just checking, okay, they don't have to notify us that they have a PPL, right? So,
It should.
so then if, so there's no, if we don't know they have it, then that they're closing, it doesn't make sense. If it would only make sense if we need to keep track for patient safety reasons where the PPLs are located. And if they close, I'm not worried about the temporary closures personally, but because there are medications in them, we are responsible. I mean, that's just kind of stuck with, I think a board should know, but I'm still deferring. But it doesn't make sense to notify us of something that we didn't even know you had.
So moving on to board member Kirkbride, then I'll open it back up for any other additional comments, if that's okay.
So I don't think we've answered that question yet, whether or not we know they have them. My initial thinking is we should know we have them. I don't know how that works, but I'm envisioning similar to when you renew your registration and you say, I provide immunization services and I do this and I do that. And yes, I have a PPL and here's the address kind of thing. I do respect the comment about inspections. And so, if that information needed to be known ahead of time, that would kind of drive like how often this would need to be updated. So do I want to know if a pharmacy has a PPL? Yes. So then do I want to know if it changes location or no longer exists? Yes. The number of days, I think I'm very flexible, like maybe that's an annual update. I don't know what that X number of days is because I think I'd have to know more about what that looks like of when are we asking them if they have it, if we decide to do that? And like what does the inspection look like? But for me, just initially, I think my answer would be yes, we would want some language around that.
Just want to pause to allow any other board members provide additional input on this section.
Board Member Kroger, I understand and respect and feel like there should be some way for inspectors to validate that these are appropriate lockers when in use. But the way that I think about this is, do we ask, and maybe this is the case, but do we ask if a pharmacy has a drive-through? Do we ask if a pharmacy has an in-window? So, and because this is an extension of that pharmacy, granted, this could be different because it may not be on the actual premises, so I understand that. But I think my overall view is we don't ask pharmacies to notify us when they close their drive-through or they close their in-window because of staffing. There might be times where the prescription locker might be rarely used, but maybe only used in very limited circumstances. So I think maybe more, brainstorming on how do we make sure that we're able to validate that these are appropriate lockers being used correctly, but without having that administrative burden of, like I said, to me, it would maybe be like, hey, this must be on your self-inspection form. And then internally, there's a way for board inspectors to make note of that. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but if this is an extension, if the intent of the Senate bill is to have this as an extension of the retail pharmacy outlet, I am very hesitant to be creating additional rules that we wouldn't have for other services, access points that, traditional pharmacy has either. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. So thank you.
Board Member Patel, yeah, I echo whatever Board Member Kroger said, and exactly that is the legislative intention. And since we have this rule, how many locker we have as of right now? I think one, right? If it's working. No, zero.
Executive Director running, not last I knew, and perhaps licensing director Hennigan could speak up. We have 8 or so.
Have 6 currently.
6.
Oh, okay. Staff member, not because those that were at the same location as the pharmacy did not have to have we got rid of the registrations. Is that part of the? Okay.
Yeah, so yes, there's some pharmacy, I think they have the locker in the same as a part of the will call, and the one is like, I think, offsite locker, or they all are within the pharmacy area.
Member Hennigan, the ones that are currently active are in a different location.
In a different location, okay. So anyway, so we don't have that many locker, even since the, initiate the rule. So my thought process is the same, not to be very prescriptive, not put more administrative burden. That licensee or pharmacy, they will be more hesitant to place the locker. If it come to us, like if it's more cases, let's to the rule afterwards. And again, when we make a rule, it's a compulsory, like if there's a complaint, make the rule, but we didn't even have that many lockers yet right now. That was my thought process. And yes, in the statute, they says like it's not supposed to be more restrictive than whatever the statute says, and the statute's intent is more kind of extension of the will call. Don't be very restrictive, don't put the more administrative burden on licensing, so.
For President Joyce, so the real life example I've seen of the PPL is at the VA where the pharmacy gates are closed, pharmacy is closed, and so they have the PPLs there, they use for employees and discharging patients, they can pick up their meds there if the retail pharmacy is closed. And so that's literally right outside the pharmacy. And another example I saw was also at a hospital setting where the PPL was directly outside the pharmacy doors, and operating there. My question is for, staff member Hennigan. In the ones that it's not on the property, like how far is it, like 2 blocks away? Is it like, what do you mean not on the property? For some of the examples, are they all on the property?
Member Hennigan, no, the ones that I'm aware are not on the property, they could be in a different city, or it's kind of, it's varied, but we don't ask the distance.
There's no, so it's like as far as you know, like a safe, secure building, like a shopping mall or a strip mall, or, I mean, like, do you know?
I would have to look, I haven't looked at these in a while, but there are some that are in, like health centers or.
Clinics, stuff like that.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, envision the need to know exactly where they are as the board, okay.
Maybe board member Chin, did you have your hand up too, or was Nate? I apologize if that is.
I can understand why we don't, and I'm all for increasing access, all for having PPLs wherever we need PPLs, and I'm always not looking for increasing administrative burden, although that wasn't necessarily the intent of the, it was to increase access to Oregonians. Our role is to make sure that we're keeping public and drugs safe, right? And so having it be on the premises doesn't make sense. We need to add anything. But I still have a niggling thing in my head that as a regulator kind of brain, that I would like to at least know where they are all over the state. Not necessarily adding a ton of administrative burden, but I'd like to know where they are.
Board member Patel, so you would know because you're calling to that pharmacy, right? And then it's going,
I'm sorry, this is permission. What do you mean I would know?
because you're, the prescription locker, if you read the definition, is an extension of the will call, right? So you don't go to, I mean, you have to have called the pharmacy, let's say if the Walgreens has the locker, right? You're going to call that Walgreens pharmacy, and then Walgreens pharmacy or whatever pharmacy, they are going to have procedure like, hey, do you want to pick up prescription by yourself? Or do you want me to keep near to your, whatever the prescription locker is? And then you put the prescription into the prescription locker, and then you will get like some sort of like QR code on birthday and verification. So you would know that where the prescription locker is.
The patient would.
Patient would, yeah.
I'm saying the board should know.
But board would know. Board also would.
Stephanie Beckmark, can we maybe give everybody a chance to talk one at a time too, so the public can hear well? And I know that, board member Kirkbride had her hand up before. If we can maybe let her chime in and then we can go back to board member Patel, then board member Chin, if that's okay.
I just finished that, the question she asked.
Sure.
Board member Chin, so board will know because you are going to do the self-inspection form. And in that, you have prescription locker. I think it's already in that supplement, right? Like if you order this kind of service, not the locker right now, but you just, if you have a prescription locker, you have yes, you just say yes, and then you write down the address. And so board will know.
Yeah, my comment was, I have the exact same comment and argument. It is an extension of the pharmacy. We would never license a pharmacy and say, we don't want to know what your address is. That would never happen. So the fact that we are storing drugs there, we want to know the location as board members, as the board, as the agency. We want to know where the location is, where the drugs are being stored. And so that's why I want to know where the location. And again, I don't think it needs to be like a, within 3 days, you must, submit this and this and this. I don't think it's onerous to, put down where your locker is located. And maybe it is gonna be on the self-inspection form. That's a great idea. I'm just not sure what we have set up for that yet, but that's exactly, why I would like that added, is because we would never have a pharmacy that's licensed that we don't know the address of it.
Executive Director Running. So the only thing I would add to that being a component of the self-inspection form and then us becoming notified of it that way is just from a resource standpoint. Some of these are in rural areas, and if we're planning inspections to get on site, and only at that point, when we're reviewing the self-inspection form, become aware that they do have a pharmacy prescription locker, and also, by the way, it's 100 miles away. I'm not sure how that would lend itself to the most efficient utilization of resources from a planning standpoint. So it's the only kind of aside I would add to that.
So Stephanie Beckmark, just for clarification on that, board staff plans inspections 2 years in advance. It's how we currently are doing them and have to do with the sheer volume that we have. Not saying that you, again, I don't want to limit any of the policy discussion, and we can change our procedures and how we do things to fit whatever the board would like. And currently there are avenues through applications where we could ask for locations. So it could be on the initial application, it's on the renewal. And if it's part of the pharmacy bridging into 41 currently, they would notify of pharmacy closures. You could do a simple clarifying of that the locker is no longer in use. You would know. That would help staff also know not to drive 100 miles to a locker that is no longer there for staff resources and time. But that is the board's decision on how you would like to proceed with that. And I apologize, board member Patel, you had your hand up too. Did you want to go ahead and finish your thought? I apologize.
No worries, Deb. Yes, you are right. But then we also have, staff compliance officers, they also email us, and in that, hey, we are planning to do your site inspection, I think 4 weeks or 2 weeks in advance. And that time you can just drop one question, by the way, do you guys have prescription locker? And at that point you say, yes, no, is in working condition or not, something like that. So is that fair?
Member Hennigan, in anticipation of some of this and to try to capture the registrations that are on the same location that we did know about, we have already built this into the database. And it is similar to the immunizations, and a pharmacy or representative pharmacy can go in anytime to that pharmacy record online and add the location. So you'll see that, they'll see that on the renewal this year or in 2026.
Just want to open it up again for any other board member comments. I'm hearing very clearly not to make it an administrative burden. It appears like there's some differing thoughts on if you need to know or not, or it's an extension of the pharmacy, if there's a way that we could easily have this not be burdensome and have this information not cause additional administrative burden, then maybe it could be receptive to the board. Pull together a couple options for the board to look at. Okay, just want to make sure summarizing that we're on the same page. We'll move on to the next policy discussion then. This is related to section 2, controlled substances. Does the board want to stay silent on if a controlled substance may be stored in a PPL? Or would the board like to add language to indicate must comply with DEA regulations? Or examples, some states have used language, must comply with federal and state controlled substance laws and rules, including but not limited to registrations that may be required for any systems before any controlled substances are dispensed. The second option would give the board flexibility. If the DEA did change their stance and permit controlled substances to be placed in lockers, then rule updates would not be needed. As our current understanding is that the DEA regulations would not permit the storage of controlled prescriptions for delivery in lockers. Just reminding the board of the August 2025 board meeting, the board sent a policy consideration request to the DEA to ask them to please reconsider permitting controlled substance prescriptions delivery in machines. So we'll keep you posted on if we hear anything back from that, but we'll open it up to discussion. Board Member Patel, you're first.
I would say this board member Patel stay silent, delete. Again, can you put your ready prescription into your will call area? If the answer is yes, then by definition is also say that prescription locker are extension of will call. So if you can store your ready prescription into the will call area, so can you put those ready controlled substance prescription to the locker? The answer is yes. So I would just say, keep it silent, don't even open that can of worms.
Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger. So this is going to be part of our retail pharmacy outlet requirements. Is there already rules in existence within that language that says must comply with federal, DEA requirements? So, I want the licensee to still comply with federal and otherwise, controlled substance laws and rules, but I don't know if it makes sense to necessarily call it out specifically here. But at the same time, I would hate for somebody to misinterpret and then get themselves or lose their DEA license because they were storing controlled substances in the locker and get themselves in hot water with the DEA. So staying silent kind of is, might be okay if we feel like it's somewhere else within the rule that covers that. And we can always, clarify that in other ways, but that's my thought. Thank you.
Board Member Panino?
Board Member Pinedo, I feel like licensees and registrants interpret how they choose. And when it's black and white, it's more defined to this is what you can and this is what you can't, which creates a whole lot less opportunity for error and a lot less opportunity for violating regulation. So I would like to keep that in there just for the safety of our patients, and lockers are an extension of the will call area. But when your will call area is 100 miles away, that's when it concerns me on the safety of the medication. And who's gonna follow up with that constantly? It may go 2 weeks before somebody gets out to the locker and checks on things. So I would like to have that safety net of following the federal and state controlled substance laws.
Member Chin?
Board Member Chin, right now is in, agreeing with what Board Member Kroger stated, that I want to keep our licensees safe and the public safe. And so if it's acknowledged that somewhere that they're not breaking any federal or state laws, then we don't need to have language, but if that's not obvious, then I think you might need to consider language.
Thank you. Board Member Hall?
Member Hall? Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of staying silent, but I don't know how clear it would be everyone, and it may be better to have it written out. That's where I'm at right now.
Member Joyce?
Member Joyce, yeah, you know, Fed always trumps state, and, if we stay silent and somebody gets into trouble, we would get in trouble allowing it unless we are clear that we have to comply with DEA regs. I wish the DEA would respond to the requests for, narcotics to be stored, outside of, in PPLs, but at this time, they haven't responded. You know, the federal law seems pretty clear on that now. I just wish they would reconsider. But I think if we stay silent and, you know, somebody, gets into trouble, with, narcotics, then we, you know, could end up in deep doo-doo.
I do worry about the stay silent. I think sometimes that is interpreted as permission, and I would be concerned about that. Remember Pineda, was your suggestion to keep the language that's in there now that registration wouldn't be issued? Was that what I was hearing you were suggesting rather than deleting it?
Remember being able, yes, I would prefer not to delete it and to make sure that it's very clear that you must comply with federal and state controlled substance laws. Because not all times when licensees go to look for something, they're not going to take the time to look and look and look and say, oh, is that possibly someplace else that I didn't read? Or, you know, if it's there, they're gonna know that that's where I looked and that's where it said it. Even if the language is someplace else, unless it's very clear that you have to look someplace else, I feel like a lot of the time, the information that is there is overwhelming and in different places, and it's not necessarily black and white. So this is where it belongs to make that clear for everyone. I think that's better to just leave it where it's at.
Yeah, so looking at kind of the choices of staying silent or adding this other statement, I don't think the other statement is clear either, because if you weren't well versed in this topic, if I read that and like, oh, follow all controlled substance rules, okay, I'm pretty good with controlled substance rules, sounds good, okay. I think you also have to have the sentence that says that they're not currently issuing registrations for this. Like, I think it almost has to be both of those statements. Or maybe just the statement that's there and then updating the language around the retail drug outlet PPL to whatever the current term is that we're using.
Member Smith, I think we should reference the DEA laws, but we shouldn't like do anything that's more burdensome than what they require for these. I do think they should be referenced though. That's all, thanks.
And I think it's time to open it back to everybody. So Board Member Patel?
Board Member Patel, what was the answer from the letter from the last meeting we sent to DEA? And again, you know, sometimes I feel like if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer. So if you ask DEA, hey, can we store this controlled substance in prescription locker? Well, DEA is going to say, hell no, you cannot do that. You know, you need registration, but is this the controlled substance we are storing? No, this is the prescription we already ready to dispense. That is the correct word. So what was the answer?
Staff Member Efremov, we have never received a response from headquarters, is who does policy discussions. They're the only ones that are permitted to speak definitively on that. We have spoken to DEA multiple times, and they stated the way that the regulations are currently written and interpreted, there is not a pharmacist on site in those situations. So when drugs are stored in a location where there is not, my understanding, that there has to be a pharmacist on site for them to have that DEA registration. So for like RDSPs, you might be aware that the remote dispensing pharmacy sites are only permitted to have DEA registrations upon initial request to them, and they do a special inspection to allow a remote pharmacist in those situations. So the DEA is opened up a bit and allowed a carve out in that one situation. That's why we've asked more broadly and in several different ways related to this other situation. I'm not aware if any other states have gotten any more traction. This might be something that's good for potentially like an NABP or something bigger to have more joint communication on this matter. But I think it's also a fundamental in just how their regulations are older and what they contemplate to permit a storage of drugs at all, period.
But remember, Patel, and you're right. So when you say the storage, that's the key word. If you say storage versus ready to dispense. So if you say ready to dispense, they will think differently. And when you say storage, they think differently. But anyway, if I know, I would have cast them in that OSPA conference. They were there. All right, anyway, thank you. Yeah.
Further thoughts or discussion? Board Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger, I think I hear kind of the general consensus is that we want to make sure our licensees know what is and isn't allowed. And I think there's multiple ways to do that. And I think, our self-inspection form, kind of going back to that, there's lots of places where, did you know that you're not allowed to do this? Here's the DEA citation. I think that's commonly used. I also think that I'd like to give more credit to those pharmacies and pharmacists and outlets for when they do decide or they want to decide to open a prescription locker, that they will do their due diligence and understand what is and is not in bounds when it comes to how they utilize these. I think for the most part that those individuals, those outlets will do their due diligence and do the right thing and make sure that they don't put themselves in a situation that could be tricky for them. So when it comes to specifically within this rule, like I said, I think we have general statements throughout, woven throughout our rules must comply with all federal regulations. So that's not something that is uncommon to already have and is kind of an umbrella rule. But if we're worried that it's not specific enough, I don't know if being in rule is the right way to communicate that.
Other thoughts from other board members? Thank you. I'll take away the summary. I hear that what summary Board Member Kroger just stated and piggyback on that we can look through Division 41 to highlight to the board what is currently in there. So you can see the options of the language currently. We can also highlight what other communication avenues and tools we have as staff communicating with licensees about regulations and clarification, and then maybe put a few options that we've heard from the variety of spectrum of thoughts here forward. Great, thank you very much. So moving on to registration application 855-143-0015. This is a fun part. There's 3 whole sections that are proposed to be struck. So it's 143-0015 application, 143-0020 change of owner and change of owner, location, or PPL pharmacy, and 143-25 closure. Since this is no longer required to be a separate registration, staff would propose striking these sections at this time. Also, the board will be discussing some of these other tenants later in other policy discussions. So I would just open it up collectively for any board members if you have any comments or concerns about striking this language. Hopefully we don't get nauseous while scrolling down, but the next section will be 143-0030. Again, PPL registration is not required since PPL is an extension of the pharmacy, but just wanted to pause and ask board members, are there any specific considerations that might need to be made for a non-resident PPL? But I don't know how that exists, to be honest. So I'm gonna open it up and it's board member Kroger to start.
Board member Kroger. So how I envision this is it would be a licensed non-resident pharmacy using the same processes, whatever we've created for our resident pharmacies to notify us of a prescription locker. I don't have concerns with a non-resident pharmacy having a prescription locker residing in our state, so long as they're following all the other stuff that we have for our resident pharmacies too. I feel like that would be safe enough.
Perfect. Board member Panito?
Nothing to add.
Board member Chin?
Member Chin is thinking, about if we don't have, they have to follow our rules, but we don't inspect them, and we're inspecting all of our in-state pharmacies that have any number of PPLs, and so, I think that would be something that I might be concerned about. I'm not sure.
Board member Chin, board member Hall.
Hall, yeah, that is a good point. I didn't have anything else to add though, at this time.
Board member Joyce?
All right, so, can you just give me an example of this? Like, we're talking about a PPL in our state
Sure.
that is being run by Idaho Pharmacy.
So say, for example, staff member F. you might have a pharmacy in Idaho that is servicing, say, Ontario, Oregon. There is a PPL located there. It is technically an extension of their pharmacy, right? But they're still required to be registered. They could still potentially have all of the same pharmacy requirements added with the PPL requirements. The inspection question is a great question. I'm not sure about that, but other than that, it would just operate normally with all the regulations that apply.
I mean, so scenario wise, because I like real life scenarios. Somebody gets a medication from the PPL that's in Ontario that is brick and mortar in Boise or closer. They get sick, something's wrong. Who do we go after? The pharmacist, just like it would be if it was a regular brick and mortar pharmacy that so we'd go after the pick in Oregon and in Boise. Okay. So, yeah. Trying to pass this off as like have an extension of the pharmacy and it's a different state and yeah, okay.
Yeah, much of our borders are very rural, so, I don't wanna throw up any barriers. I think those are great examples. I think it's a moot point for the inspections. We're already okay that we don't inspect our out-of-state pharmacies, so why would we be upset that we're not inspecting the extension of our out-of-state pharmacies? So if we fix that someday, I don't know how we would, then we would be inspecting the extension like we inspect the main site. But that's not currently something we do, and we're already okay with that. So I don't have a problem with the non-resident.
Member Smith?
Member Smith, no further comments at this time.
Member Patel?
Member Patel, so if I'm understanding correctly, so we are not limited only to in-state pharmacy. Out-of-state pharmacy can have locker, but then we do have limitation on the mileage. I think it's 120, or we didn't remove that.
Staff member F. that is up for policy discussion, but you are correct.
Okay, all right. No, I don't have any comment, thanks.
The staff member F. gonna open it up one more time. Any other additional comments?
This is board member Chin. Way back when we first started talking about this, I have a recollection of there being concerns about pharmacy in Florida or these big companies populating PBLs everywhere, whatnot that ever happened, but I recall those conversations, but I don't. And the concern about not having any jurisdiction over some pharmacies that are not necessarily border states. So that's what I remember.
Board member Kroger, I understand where that maybe line of thinking comes from, but are we concerned about a pharmacy across the country mailing prescriptions directly to the patient? So what is the difference between having that prescription stored in a locker versus being delivered directly to the patient's residence? So I think that's kind of where I don't feel like this is, I think that's maybe an extreme kind of, concern. I think it's a valid concern to think through, but I think it's probably not very likely. But if there was an out-of-state pharmacy, say in Florida, and they wanted to use a prescription locker and they have their resident license and they have their PIC licensed, to me, it is the same as that prescription being, this is about giving the patients the preference of where they want to pick up their prescriptions from their pharmacy of choice. So if we're okay, like board member Kirkbride said, we're okay with this non-resident pharmacy being licensed and sending prescriptions to patients here. This is just about where the patient wants to pick it up. And in some ways, this might actually be a better and more secure and safe place for the patients to pick it up from that pharmacy in Florida or New Jersey or wherever. If they're meeting the other requirements, I feel like this is the same, but I think it's a valid concern, but I think it's more of kind of maybe a fringe, not very likely scenario, but I appreciate you bringing that up, Kat.
And just to tag on to that real quick is now that they have something that's not quite brick and mortar, but a physical thing, would that be something that we would want to inspect is the only thing that, just not needing an answer, but just something to in the brain.
But Patel, I agree. So if you're going to put the locker here, then I think we should have some sort of provision that we are going to inspect. And I don't care, like if we do annually, biannually, every 3 years, but that they are following all the ordering law.
Further comments? Hearing none, summary that I'm hearing from board members is no additional parameters necessary, and staff will add this potentially to additional inspection discussions when we talk about inspections for out-of-state pharmacies. It's on the policy list. We'll make sure to keep this as part of the consideration also. All right, moving on to the next section, 855-143-0050, personnel. Paren 1, a pharmacy is required to have in Division 41. So this really is duplicative and staff would propose striking this language here. Paren 2 is teed up for policy discussion. So the language reads, prior to utilizing a PPO, the Oregon licensed pharmacist, intern, COPT, and PT must have completed a training program on the proper use of the PPO. For policy discussion, does the board want to keep this language and add to the outlet requirements in Division 41 section of PPO, or is what is currently in Division 41 sufficient? So trying to help tee up the regulations for references, the board thinks about this division kind of moving in and becoming part of 41. I believe board member Pinedo is up first. Board member Pinedo?
Board member Pinedo. About non-licensees stocking the PPL. They put the will call bags in the will call area. Bring that up.
We will bring that up at a later time, or if you want to share your opinions now, that's totally appropriate too. Board member Chin?
I'm gonna be silent on this issue.
Member Hall?
I think the general requirements listed on the side should be sufficient enough.
Board Member Joyce?
Board Member Joyce, I don't see anything. I don't want to add more administrative burden.
Member Kirkbride, sorry.
No, we always get confused. We do think alike sometimes. Sometimes not, which is also a good thing. I appreciate it. That makes it fun, keeps it fun. I was scrolling to see because the thought that popped in my head, which was also kind of on the track with Board Member Pineda, was I want to make sure when we talk about personnel that we are considering items that are returned and removed out of this, what are we calling it? A device? I think we called it a device in the definition. And we have rather onerous language around when drugs are returned to be redispensed and who has controlled them and how those people are trained. And so just kind of a placeholder, not specifically related to this comment, but I want to make sure somewhere in here when we talk about personnel, we are addressing the return and redispense piece.
Member Smith, I feel like since this is basically an extension of the pharmacy, I feel like the current regulations kind of cover this, so I think I'm good with striking it. That's all.
Member Patel?
Member Patel, I think whatever we have currently in the big form, I think that will suffice, so no need to add more language. Thank you.
Member Kroger?
Board Member Kroger, I agree that the general requirements for training are sufficient. Our licensees shouldn't have to be reminded that they need to train their people on every potential activity that occurs in the pharmacy. So I think listing it just once and expecting it for all makes the most sense to me.
Just want to open it up for any further thoughts from any other board members.
So Board President Joyce, so we have the option of just striking this part. Yeah, I would support that because everything that's been said.
Staff Member Eknoff, just to also, it's hard to put in again, kind of visualizing how it sits in 41 might be a little different because it's not just going to be like this plumped in over, right? So there might be some zhuzhing of how the language gets placed in, but knowing the direction, being clear that it's already has the foundation, no additional language from here necessarily needs to come over. And also hallmarking to address, which hopefully we'll get to today or the next time we talk about this, addressing the returns and the redispense and licensees or non-licensees I have marked to make sure we discuss too.
Yeah, that sounds great. You know, select all backspace.
And we'll keep moving on then to the next section, which is security. So this is 143.01.00. Great, we're on the same spot. So this section really can encompass many aspects of the requirements, right? And also overlaps with general requirements. So for the ease of today's discussion, thinking it would be good to kind of think big picture here first as we have this policy discussion. It also appears in this section that it will also have much overlap later on with the requirements for records, P&Ps, licensee responsibilities, and we can do those discussions more specifically in other sections. But again, I want the board to think big and broad and share whatever you want to share, just making sure we don't forget to talk about these things, but also try to talk about them in the most relevant section if possible. Policy discussion here is really thinking what is needed to ensure the security of the PPL. So what are those parameters that we talked about in the presentation were really identified by NEBP model rules or other state regulations? And there's just kind of a highlight reminder of talking about locker location. Is that in or outside? What is security to prevent theft and diversion, to prevent unauthorized access? And you can see some additional requirements that are over in paren 3 and 5 currently that address supervision. Paren Paren 4 addresses only licensees may access. Paren 6 requires licensees to escort vendors for repair. Paren 7 provides real-time notification if a system is breached. Paren 8 speaks to constant surveillance, and also potentially pharmacist supervision. Again, 3 and 5 also address some of that. So as the board's thinking about this discussion, you might have a lot of that foundation already currently listed here. You might not want the specificity of that exact language. You might just want the concepts or the tenets, or maybe you don't need them at all. So just want to open it up for all thoughts and start with board member Chin.
I don't feel prepared to open this one up.
Okay, you want to pass to board member Hall?
Board Member Hall. What's on the right is what's already requirements of a prescription security, is that right?
What's on the right is just helping kind of think big picture of what are the tenets that most states account for. How you want to get there, obviously, is your decision, and then just trying to kind of loop back all of the different parens that are on the left that are already in rules. So it might actually be helpful to look at what is currently in PPLs of what you would like to keep or not keep. And then just also the regulation for reference to kind of help you know what you already have in Division 41. So I know this one's going to be a little bit hard to have a conversation. We're going to stumble a little bit. Hopefully we'll get everything by the end of the full discussion.
Okay, Board Member Hall, I'll just go through where I had comments, I guess. So on line 250, that one A,
The different.
I had to push it down so we could see the
Can I
comments.
just share, do you know what the paren is? If you could share the paren for us.
1A,
1A, right here.
which
Is
is
actually-
possible to just say secure location that's climate controlled and protected from the elements. I don't know how everybody else feels. It probably has to be indoor if it's climate controlled and protected from the elements. One parent B, I agree with. It needs to be fastened to a permanent structure. 3, parent C. I feel like saying any component of the PPL is not functioning, it's pretty broad. What if a light goes out, or I don't know. I read somewhere where it said PPL must be secure to prevent access when, I don't know, I get 3 C's. Too broad for me. How far down are we going? Sorry.
Whole section if you would like, or we can do in chunks, whatever you think is best.
That's all I have for, let's see. This might be nitpicky, but 7C. The last sentence, the system must provide a clear view of the entire PPL, including its access points, and I wrote the back too, like to have a camera on to see the back too. I don't know, it just seems a lot. That's all I have right now.
Board member Joyce?
Yeah, any quote, this is heresy, any component of the PPL is not functioning, is too broad, too much, gray there, not enough black and white. Most of the other stuff makes sense, being permanently secured in the location for protection from natural elements, that record keeping, the record keeping makes sense. And how would that be done? I'm talking about number 4, para 4, a record must be maintained with the name and Oregon license number of each person accessing the PPL. That's maintained at the brick and mortar, I'm assuming, right? Like, they would keep track with electronic access and so forth about who's accessing it. Okay. Most of these are fairly clear. Minimum security methods must include properly functioning alarm system. At the PPL, real-time notification. For unauthorized access, that's like security at pharmacy security. Electronic entry system that is controlled by licensed pharmacist records identification. It's authorizing access, who's securing a PPL, the identification of who's accessing. Yeah, I don't really have too much problem with the details here, but the C, any component of the PPL is not functioning part might need to be fine tuned.
Thank you. Board Member Kirkbride?
I would like to see a lot of the things around the security and placement go away. I don't think we need to add that much detail. And I think it's covered when we talk about security of our prescription area, when we are thinking this is an extension of our pharmacy. So I think we could just add words like the registered pharmacy and any PPLs, the prescription area and PPLs, instead of repeating these statements. So I don't think we need para 1, A, B, C. I do see a place for, I guess it's para 2 now about PPL access and who can access it, because that would be very specific to the device. And having a record of who has accessed it. Again, I think we need to think very deeply about the unlicensed personnel piece. I don't have specific thoughts or comments now, but I think we need to think very carefully about that. I think we need to be less specific with some of the security and alarm stuff and keep it to, the PIC is responsible for the security of the PPL. To me, I don't think we need all that detail.
Member Smith, yeah, I kind of agree with what Board Member Kirkbride said. Just being treated like an extension of the pharmacy, and I feel like we have a lot of that stuff listed already, and I think that would cover the PPL. That's all. Thanks.
Member Patel?
Board Member Patel, I will echo whatever Board Member Kirkbride and Board Member Smith said. I don't think so. We have to add all those language. And when you just say security of the locker, I personally believe some of the locker is more secure than the pharmacy. Like if I give you example, like we have 2 camera system, we have simply safe alarm system, and still they managed to break into my pharmacy. They just break my glass door. If you just say, like, if you're going to say, oh, every pharmacy must have the steel doors, right? What about the windows? And some people are so advanced and they're so genius, they even put a hole in your ceiling and they enter. I was like, what are we talking about here? Security, right? So I think this is all like, it looks really great on the paper. It's more administrative burden. I think if they want to steal, they can even put the gun on my head and they can steal the control station. So this is all, I think it's unnecessary. It's already there it's already there in the main pharmacy and this extension of the will call. Thank you.
Board Member Kroger, I agree. I think they thought of worst case scenario. It's a very detailed rule, and I know there was a lot of thought put into these rules. My questions are, do we require real-time notification of breaches of security for for the retail outlet? Do we require cameras at retail? Like, I mean, are those requirements, they should be the same, I guess, is the path I'm headed down. For 3A and B, I'm actually concerned that this means that the prescription locker is not accessible unless there is a pharmacy, like the outlet is open, and that really diminishes the ability for patients to get to use these lockers. I think the intent of these lockers is, hey, pharmacy is closed, but they can still get them. So I would definitely want to make sure, that's how I read 3A and B. I would definitely want to make sure that that is very clear, that these can really be, if the building that it's in is accessible 24 hours a day, that the locker is also accessible regardless of a pharmacist being able to real-time supervise, I guess, or yeah, so, and I think the technology behind many of these lockers, it ensures that they're not going to be put in there unless all the other requirements, consultations, et cetera, are met. So I agree. I think Board Member Kirkbride articulated it a bit better than I am right now, but I think a lot of this is unnecessary and actually really limiting the utility of these lockers. And if we are lumping this in with the RP rules, make them the same. Thank you.
Staff Member Ekman, just for one point of clarification, for 3A and B, the way it was currently constructed did require a pharmacist to be accessed because real-time potential request for counseling had to occur. Remember, counseling rules were different at the time these regulations were written. So you do have a different counseling rule that permits the written communication via counseling and the offer for such. Also, remember the offer has to either come from a licensee or it could be in that paper format. So this again could be recontemplated from that, but just wanted to make sure not to lose sight of all the other moving pieces that are going to happen in this conversation too. Board Member Pinedo.
Board Member Pinedo, the big C, the date and time of each activity fall under the record keeping of everything and who's entering and who's exiting and who's doing what.
Staff Member Ekman, yes, sorry, again, the way these rules are constructed, there's a lot of repeat potentially, even though this is security, it's talking about security records too. So we might have some overlap in discussions too. I apologize. And Board Member Chen?
Remember, Chin, the only thing that I'm perfectly comfortable with, starting with Board Member Kirkbride's, we don't need all of this stuff repeated, but in terms of the surveillance system, I think that because it's particularly the outside ones, I think you have to have cameras. Nobody was saying that you don't have cameras on those, were they?
Board Member Kroger, no, that, I think that was maybe me who made that comment. I'm just saying that, right now it's, there's some language in there around like real-time notification, surveillance that utilizes continuously accessible and recorded video. I think that is not what I think the retail pharmacy
And I don't
outlet
think
has.
this is Board Member Chen, I don't think it was a real-time notification to us.
No, to the-
It was that somebody is aware that your PPL is being broken into, that's.
Yes, I don't know if that already exists for. Is there rules that what the notification timeframe of when somebody breaks into your pharmacy? It should mirror what,
It should mirror that, okay.
that's what I'm saying.
Board Member Patel, and with your surveillance and then most of the PP for the prescription locker, I cannot say for all of them, but majority of them, they already coming with camera, surveillance, audio, video, communications and everything.
Right.
But if you put this like 3A and B, which I hope so we are going to remove that, that means it's totally defeat the purpose.
No, agreed.
The words right out of my mouth. And this Board Member Joyce, and the PPLs that I've seen they're like Amazon lockers. They have the camera. The one in the VA has a camera. They already come with cameras. I think the thinking back in 2021, when we're different board makeup, was that we wanted to treat it as an ATM, where you have a transaction of, sensitive items, money or medications, and you wanted to have the security image there. And then some of the thinking was, oh, we need to have a camera overlooking the machine from above and all this stuff. That was part of the conversation back then, but you're right. I mean, the cameras already come and already part of the machinery, so it's kind of a moot point is my point. So if we just stuck to the RP rules, and the equipment already comes with a camera, but just like ATMs do, there's maybe no need to have all that additional language here.
Just quick comment on board member Chin. The overhead cameras were actually for the remote dispensing places so that they could watch the tech people. Not so much for the PPLs, if I recall.
Still, I mean, you still don't need the language there.
We don't need it here, no, but that was a,
The staff member up front, I want to be able to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to speak to, and that everyone on the call can hear one conversation or one person speaking at a time. So does anyone else want to add comment? I think there's actually AG Hunt would like to add something, please.
Wanted to point out, like, I think, one of the things I think about, and I don't know if this is beyond the security part or if it's somewhere else already. But I'm just thinking about, like, some people are talking about like that it is indoors. Well, unless we make that explicit, right, that it has to be indoors, they don't have to be indoors, right? So we don't want to assume necessarily, and we assume that they're coming with cameras, but if you don't put any requirements around, which you don't have to, but if you don't put any requirements around it, nothing, you have to have cameras. But like in theory, if you just say you can have a prescription locker and you don't put anything around it, it would probably be a bad business choice for someone to do this, but they could literally take a high school locker and throw it on the street, right? Like in theory, right? So just pointing out, like, there are, think those things through, and then what is the effect of that have on the person that's getting the drug and the safety of the drug and those sorts of things as well. Just to, so like,
Board member Kirkbride first, and then board member Joyce.
Yeah, I'm glad board member Kroger spoke up about 3A and B because I totally misinterpreted that. I read it like when the machine's being loaded. So I'm picturing like your C2 order comes in, you throw open your cabinet and you're loading all your stuff in, and that's when it's unsecured. And then once all the drugs are loaded for pickup, you secure it, and then it's ready for patients to access. So I'm glad that was clarified. I do not support having restrictions. So I think we need to figure out how we make it the most accessible. But I do think we have to have a way to like log who is accessing it. So if you think about like a Pixis or any machine that people are loading, there's always a log of employees who have accessed it. You want that for security reasons. So I think we still have to have the log of who has accessed it. But I appreciate the clarity around the intent of 3A and B because I did not read it that way. Thank you.
Board President Joyce, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know I mentioned that they already come with cameras, but I mean, do we not think it's a good idea to have additional security in terms of camera, video? I mean, because prior to our DSP conversations, maybe before you came onto the board, we were discussing cameras near prescription lockers. And that was the thinking back then is the just picking it up and throwing it off the back of a pickup truck and driving off with it. I don't know. Just some thoughts.
For Kirkbride, I think we can have a simple statement about security that doesn't have to be so specific about this type of alarm and this and real time and like it's just too detailed, but I think we can have a simple statement that it needs to be monitored and secured. And we can probably come up with a statement like that. And if the machine doesn't come with that, then the pharmacy would be able to comply without having 47 rules to meet.
Board member Kroger. I'm pro secure drugs, okay? That I want to make sure that that's not interpreted in any other way. But the same security requirements we have for the pharmacy should mirror these lockers. So I think that also would cover and I'm making an assumption, which you need to be careful about, but I assume that most outlets that are contemplating the use of prescription lockers are going to use ones that come with, there's a lot of great technology. I would be very surprised if somebody's contemplates using a low tech version of a locker. So I think that if we indicate that the security requirements for these lockers must match what is in a traditional pharmacy site, it eliminates in my mind, it eliminates that risk for a locker just sitting out in the sunshine, next to the tree on the corner. That's, that's not going to happen because you don't have pharmacies with that kind of open access either. So that's kind of where I get the concerns. I think those would be fringe cases. But if they have the same security requirements as a retail pharmacy outlet, then I think we're good. I don't think that those situations would come up. I don't think we need to be that specific, saying, don't let these, prescriptions cook, in a tin can while you wait 3 days for somebody to come pick it up. I don't think that's going to happen because we've already have those rules in place.
Remember Patel, and with the temperature control and everything, most of the locker that I know, it's pretty advanced and they already have that temperature controlled environment, just FYI.
Any further board discussion on this topic? Okay, so just a summary of what I think I hear to make sure we're clearly communicating. It sounds like the majority of what is here, staff will then funnel through and look at what we currently have in Division 41 to see if it meets that language. We can highlight certain things that might not be accounted for the board to see. And then also maybe if it isn't as clear in specificity is or isn't needed to kind of do that assessment side by side. I also would like to also make sure that we are looking at the general tenet of being maybe more general on how you say that must prevent unauthorized access, per se, as an example. A company could then do their due diligence to meet what that means. And if that was breached, obviously that would come before the board as a potential violation of that they did not do that. And if they chose to use processes that were not good enough, then they could learn from that type of setting that standard and how this section of rules might be written. I did hear two really great spin-off conversations that I'd like to maybe pivot in real time if it's okay to get the board to give some input on. I think they were slated for later, but it seems like good timing related to must a pharmacist be accessible in real time? So the construct of how this division was written in the past when the rules of counseling were written differently, it did contemplate having a pharmacist accessible and having a live audio visual feed. Wow, that word's hard today for me. In real time. So I'd like to go around and do a round robin if I can with board members to see where you're at. If you think a pharmacist needs to be available in real time, or if the locker can operate when a pharmacist is not. And again, we'll make sure that it meets the counseling requirements, and the other, we'll do the hear your policy directive, and then we'll in the background put it through the machinery of, are there any other rules we need to maybe consider? I apologize. I think we did Board Member Hall last time, so Board Member Joyce, I think you're starting, is that right?
Sure, Board Member Joyce. I don't think there's a need to have a pharmacist available. I think if, there's an emergency, call 911, go to the hospital. The counseling rules already, what do you call it, disposed or made it unnecessary for that need. So I don't think so.
Remember Kirkbride?
As long as all the regulations are met, we don't need a pharmacist there. That's the whole point.
Smith?
Member Smith, yeah, I think as long as there's a way for them to get hold of a pharmacist if they do have questions. I know like some of the pharmacies that mail out prescriptions for a first time script, they put like a note in there to call this number, and I think that'd be more than sufficient.
Board Member Patel, I also share the same feeling. I don't think so. We need pharmacist available.
Remember, Kroger, the same.
Thank you. Member Pineda?
Remember, though, I agree.
Member Chin?
Member Chin agrees.
And Board Member Houghton, sorry.
Member Hall, yeah, I agree completely. We shouldn't have to have 24-hour assist. We should want the patient to be able to access the locker and make it convenient. And if they need to talk to a pharmacist, then they can get a hold of us.
Any further thoughts? It seems like there was overwhelming agreement on that. So we can also, that will help inform maybe some of the other questions, decisions related to the other policy discussions. But I had one more, if we could do a round robin on, must it be a licensee restocking and destocking the machines? And I think we start with Board Member Kirkbride.
I think this is a bigger question than just PPLs. So the question really is, can unlicensed personnel handle drugs? And I think in this day and age and extensive use of couriers, deliveries, all the various ways that we get medications to people, I think there might be a pathway for unlicensed personnel, trained employees of the pharmacy, perhaps. I don't know where we want to go with that, but I think we need to open the door to that conversation, considering the whole reason we have these lockers is because access is a problem. And because we lack pharmacies and we lack pharmacists and we lack technicians. And so if we then say that we need a licensed person, that then bottlenecks the whole process. And so I'd like to have that conversation to see what that looks like and if we can land on something we all feel safe about around unlicensed personnel.
Member Smith?
Member Smith, I think to go back to some of the board member Kroger said, I mean, how is this different than like a prescription being sent in the mail and delivered? I think it's really close to that. And I feel like also too, for this to be viable for a pharmacy to have something that, you know, is maybe 100 miles away in a pharmacy desert area, it may be really difficult to find a technician that could actually stop this. And I think that it goes to it being prohibitive to have a licensee do this. But I definitely also agree with what board member Kirkbride said, that the unlicensed person in the pharmacy, that has to be, I think, resolved. That's a bigger issue than this right here. And I think that has to be resolved first before we can get this. So thanks.
Member Patel?
Member Patel also agree with all the comments by board member Kirkbride and Smith, so no further comment.
Board Member Kroger, I don't feel currently that a licensee is required, so long as there is policies and procedures and records kept as to who's doing what and how it's getting in there. But like board member Smith said, this is just like a courier. The chances of somebody putting it on the wrong doorstop or something, there's always going to be that chance. A licensee could make the mistake. But you know, I'm sure the outlets that contemplate and use these have barcode scanning and other, you know, you can only open locker 24 when you scan this prescription. So I don't think this requires a licensee to complete this task.
Member Pineda?
Do you really want to ask me?
Me matters.
Board Member Pineda, is this considered the practice of pharmacy or to assist in the practice of pharmacy? And if so, does the law allow a non-licensee to assist in the practice of pharmacy? is a lot bigger than just this. So if this PPL is considered, you know, there's counseling involved, there's all of these other mitigating factors to this. Is the act of putting the medications in this locker considered assisting in the practice of pharmacy? And if that is the case, does the law allow that? And if the law doesn't allow that, then again, we have to go back to that problem. This is the definition and this is what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Board Member Chin?
Board Member Chin, I think Board Member Pineda just said that this is a bigger picture, and that's exactly why it's a bigger picture. I don't think we have an answer about, there's no easy answer for this one until we answer what an unlicensed person can do per our statute.
Member Hall?
Member Hall, I agree this is a bigger conversation, but think that a trained unlicensed personnel should be able to refill the PPL.
Joyce, so, I mean, recently we had a shortage of technicians. Sometimes it's hard to find staff, and we're talking about, rural pharmacies, you know, potentially, trying to deliver meds to, PPL. You know, the US mailman can deliver meds into different secured boxes, right? And he's not licensed. The mail person's not licensed. You know, I don't see this as assisting in the practice of pharmacy. There's security parameters, I'm sure, with the delivery process. Like even when Credina sends meds to pharmacies, or I'm sorry, not Credina, Cardinal, sends boxed meds to, there's a very secure barcoding process. You know, heck, couriers, I could start my own business, Uber drugs, you know, delivery. And yeah, I just don't think we need to escalate this to somebody who's licensed to move drugs from one secure place to another when there's already technology that can ensure or at least track delivery of these drugs to PPL.
Open it up for any further comment. To summarize, the takeaway I hear is that staff will do our due diligence to do the assessment as a bigger assessment of what can unlicensed personnel do and what they cannot do related to the statute and what is the assistance in the practice of pharmacy. It seems like the board is interested and looking further at that. And also, I think it's important as the board continues these conversations that if you are able to permit unlicensed individuals to do this, I heard everyone kind of raise that there's all this technology and security that's going to make it safe. Make sure that you don't forget to put that in your rules. As AAG Hunt had said, if we start stripping everything away, you might forget about that when you change things. And that's kind of the moving pieces again of when rules get changed. So just for consideration, not to lose sight of. Anything else further for this part? Summary seem okay? Okay, let's move on to the next section then. Another fun section. So this gives us some momentum. I know we're running out of time here, but the next four sections, 143.0120, drug procurement, 143.0125, drug storage, 143.0130, drug loss, and 143.0150, outlet sanitation. We believe are all accounted for in Division 41. And since the locker, again, is an extension of the pharmacy, these would likely be duplicative. And we would propose to strike these at this time and would just pause and open it up for any comment from board members. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next section, which I think is minimum equipment. Rachel, help me out if I'm okay.
Yeah, you're right. Mhm.
855-143-0155, minimum equipment requirements. So staff would propose for Paren 1A and B to strike through these sections, again, already accounted for and would be duplicative. Paren C, feels like a good opportunity to have a policy discussion. Prior to general requirements, it's kind of similar, but it happens to reflect to patient notification requirements. So for board member consideration, what information must or should be provided to patients using a PPL? So for example, if the machine is not working correctly, what is the number they should be able to contact if they need assistance? They need to request counseling. If it's an issue with the prescription being received or notifications by law, I will share, staff will do in the background our homework related to everything in law that you can see the pharmacy regulations for reference there, that the pharmacy is required to notify. Again, this is an extension of the pharmacy, so we'll do a little cross-referencing to make sure what needs to be communicated potentially for board consideration at the PPL, or if it's already communicated through the pharmacy, it might not be required on that machine. So please share your thoughts on that too, but trying to do a little bit more higher big picture, what information does a patient need to know? And keeping in mind, if the pharmacist does not have to be available, that might sway a little bit some of your thoughts. And I believe it is now board member Smith's turn to go first.
Board member Smith, that jumps out to me right away. The like licensed pharmacist, I think it'd be line 408, or sorry, 407 through 409, licensed pharmacist from, yes, that would like tie to the pharmacy, never mind. If I can, I think I'll ask and see if other people come back to me. Thank you.
You don't need to talk about C, right? Signage in a location easily seen by public, that's what we're talking.
Staff member, staff member Efremoff, if there's any other things too about really communicating with patients. So if there's anything that might need to be posted on or information conveyed from that machine device, is the better word, device that needs to communicate to the patient or via the prescription, whatever you think the patient should know when using this, or more limited if you would like.
Okay, board member Patel, I'm fine with the C, the signage in a location easily seen by public. Of course, you're going to put your pharmacy name. But the A, which is says stating, insert the name of the affiliated pharmacy, may be able to substitute a less expensive drug, which is therapeutic. I feel like this is the extension of the bill goal. It does not make any sense that I had to put that sign in the locker area. And trust me, no one wants to dispense brand name nowadays. Money. This other one is, the B also, I don't feel like this is again is the extension of the will call. I don't feel like we should put all those things because it's already there in the brick and mortar pharmacy. Definitely we should have make sure you have pharmacy contact information on the, pharmacy operation hours and then pharmacy contact information on the locker somewhere indicated. But other thing, I feel like shouldn't be there.
Board member Kroger. So this one I struggle a little bit with, because I see there's a lot of different scenarios to contemplate. A locker that's right across the hallway from the actual pharmacy, or a locker that's 20 miles standalone, maybe in a health system or some other clinic, if you will. And then I also imagine if all of the same signage and notification requirements at the outlet are also required on this locker, then they're going to start looking like the bumper of a car, many cars that we see driving around town. It's just going to be signage everywhere. And I don't know that that's the right answer either. I need to think a little bit more on this because I do think it's important that we're able to, the notification requirements, especially the ones that are in statute, I totally understand the intent, the prescription readers, the language translation. So I struggle a little bit with how this comes to life with the PPL. I think at minimum, there absolutely should be signage that says like, maybe it's, no, I'm just saying like, this is who manages this locker and is this pharmacy, this is their numbers. And that should also be available in the prescriptions as well. So I'm sorry, Bree, I don't have a solution on this, but I do think it would bunch of signs on these lockers, I don't think is really the intent of what we're trying to accomplish with some of those patient notification statutes. Thank you.
AG Hunt, want to step in for a second?
Oh, I think you might, so some of them we might have to, just
Where it says
based on the way the statute is written. So I need to, I can do more into that to make sure.
So this is where I think the issue is that, so you might like you can imagine there's going to be a locker in the waiting room of a pharmacy. So I think as we contemplate how we write this in rule, we don't need that sign, that notification sign, on the locker and on the pharmacy, right? That's, so like, I think that's how we need to just kind of think cleverly on, and how we ensure that we meet the statutes, but we're not saying it must be on the locker. So that like, depending on the situation, the outlets can do the right thing, with the notification requirements perhaps. But that we also account for all the varying scenarios too.
Yeah, because that's, it also, obviously, these were not written with this in mind, right? Like, so this one says, like, it's very specifically talking about, like, it's counter. It's a counter, counter, which clearly there's no counter, but it's still like. These offers need counters. Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyhow, just like when looking at that, like, we just gotta make sure we, meet those requirements.
Board Member Pineda? Nothing to add. Board Member Chin?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Board Member Hall?
Member Hall, just, I think hours of the pharmacy and contact information and then minimize all the extra if we can.
Board Member Chin, Board President Joyce.
Thank you. Board President Joyce. Yeah, there's no need for all the physical signage. I'm picturing, the car with all the bumper stickers to coexist, all that stuff and all. Anyways, everything is done in the retail pharmacy anyway, the brick and mortar stuff, that's where, they would know if you need a prescription reader. That's where they would, have the information for the different languages, and everything else at the retail pharmacy. So a reference maybe, or a sign with hours and contact information for the brick and mortar pharmacy at the PPL. I think that's really all that should be needed. And then maybe electronically, we could meet the statute, maybe electronically, like on screen or somehow, instead of putting actual physical signs on them.
Yeah, seeing them all here together reminds me, we have a lot of signs. They all appear to be by statutes. I think we're kind of in between a rock and a hard place. I think there might be some flexibility. Some of them are very specific where the prescription is dispensed, where I think it's going to be hard. But I also think we need to be mindful of the intent. And the intent is that patients see these. So imagine the patient that never goes to the brick and mortar pharmacy 100 miles away, has never been there. Their prescription got sent electronically. They chose the prescription locker as their pickup place. They've never been there. How are they going to know about the translation and the reading device and all the things? So I know it seems like a lot, but I think we need to be mindful that our patients do need to know these things. I think it's going to be solved because people are going to use, people are likely going to use the high-tech device that has the screen and you can program and the rule as written says that that can be a substitute, which is great. Worst case scenario, someone is not using that solution, they are going to have to place some signs. They don't have to be on the machine, but they're gonna have to be in a location that can be seen by patients. So I don't see a way around a lot of this, so I don't have any, comments around language necessarily. It all looks pretty in line with the statutes.
Member Smith, I like E that it has the ability to have all these kind of components electronically, and I think that's a good way to get around the like bumper sticker worry of these. And if it was kind of like an ATM, I'm sure that patients could select, I know for like the bank ATMs, there's like a hearing and I think it has like braille or hearing impaired on there, and then you could also sometimes select the language when you go to an ATM too. So I think that might be a good way to kind of cover our bases with that. That's all, thanks.
Opening it back up, I see board member Patel.
Member Patel, I think this is just a comment. In general, we have so many signage in pharmacy, like literally I go to every pharmacy, even my pharmacy, there is no space. Like even if I have like 1 inch, like there is a sign, if you go to Walmart and some of the Rite Aid, they would like, it's not even visual and nothing they can do because, you have 1, 2 big open counter for drop off and pick up. So, and then I go to clinic and then barely there is any sign. Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? The summary from this one, the takeaway Aging Hunt will do the homework on the statute and how that might look here. I did take a couple notes too for consideration too as the discussion for a locker that is at the same physical location as the pharmacy versus a different. There might be a way to structure tiering if the board wants to consider too, if there's different things that might be required because of the distance, maybe not, but just from the signage perspective too, can be something that could be considered as we discuss this. And also keeping in mind, yes, the patients might never actually have entered that pharmacy. So what other requirements might need to be accounted for communication? And we will work on that homework. Just doing a time check here at 4:20. Do we go until 4:30 today, Board President?
Well, I'd like to adjourn the meeting around 4:25, 4:30.
Okay.
Is that okay? Or do you guys want to take off?
Board Member Kruger, there's 8 of us.
You want
We
to
only had a minute to speak. We would
Okay.
not get through everyone, so I don't know if it makes sense to start the next
start
survey.
a new one? Okay, we'll go ahead and I'll move to adjourn.
Staff member, I think it's a good time. Also, this next section is pretty robust and it all kind of combines. So it would be good to have the same maybe brain thought pattern as we flow through it. But I don't know if there's something else from the agenda that I know we noticed for today that could be done. I'm looking at staff member Melvin, and is it anything else?
In 5
In
minutes?
5 minutes, yes.
No. Not that I know of.
Joyce runs a tight ship. I want to be efficient with everyone's time. No,
We're good to adjourn?
back to board.
All right. All right. Is there a motion to move to adjourn the meeting at 4:20 PM?
So moves, Board Member Smith.
Seconded, Board Member Pinetto.
Board President Joyce, yes. Board Vice President Kirkbride,
Yes.
Board Member Chin,
Yes.
Board Member Hall,
Yes.
Board Member Kroger,
Yes.
Board Member Patel, Board Member Pinello, Board Member Smith.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for robust discussions.
Um,